Okay, let's get into it. You've probably seen the headlines. Donald Trump nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's caused a huge stir, tons of debate. But how real was his chance of actually winning? We're going to cut through the noise, separate the hype from the reality, and just look at the facts.
So that's the big question, right? Were these nominations a serious shot at one of the world's highest honors, or was it mostly just political buzz? To figure that out, you really have to understand how the whole Nobel process works in the first place.
Every Nobel story starts with the nominations. So let's kick things off by looking at who actually put Trump's name in the ring and, what reasons they gave for it.
The support came from a few different places. You had U.S. Congressman Buddy Carter, who nominated him for his part in an Iran-Israel ceasefire. Then the nation of Pakistan put his name forward, citing diplomatic moves. But that was specifically for the 2026 prize. And on top of that, you had other endorsements coming from leaders in countries like Israel and Cambodia. So on the surface, it looks like a pretty compelling case was starting to build. But, see, just getting nominated is step one. The process itself is packed with strict rules and deadlines, and this is exactly where Trump's candidacy started hitting some pretty serious roadblocks. Yeah, not all that early support stuck around. One of the key nominators, a senior Ukrainian lawmaker named Oleksandr Mereshko, actually went public and pulled his endorsement. His reasoning? He was disillusioned with how things were going in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. For anyone hoping to win a Nobel, having a nomination taken back like that, especially so publicly, well, that's a huge setback.
And then you have the issue of timing. The Nobel Committee is famously, and I mean famously, strict about its deadlines. As you can see here, the cutoff for the 2025 prize was January 31st. The problem is several of the big, high-profile nominations for Trump rolled in after that deadline. That made them totally ineligible for the 2025 prize right out of the gate.
So, let's recap. You've got a nomination that was withdrawn and several others that came in too late. So, how did it all shake out for the 2025 prize? Well, the committee made its decision.
And in the end, the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize did not go to Donald Trump. The committee awarded it to Maria Corina Machado. She's a Venezuelan opposition leader, and they recognized her for her decades, literally decades, of work advocating for democracy and human rights. When you put their cases side by side like this, it really gets to the heart of the committee's choice. Trump's case was built on recent, sometimes controversial peace deals, plus a nomination process that was, let's just say, complicated. Machado's case, though, was built on a lifetime of consistent, long-term advocacy. These are just two fundamentally different profiles for a Peace Prize winner.
All of this brings us to the most important question. What exactly is the Nobel Committee looking for anyway? To really get their decision, you have to peek behind the curtain at their process.
Here's the key thing you have to understand about the Nobel Committee. They couldn't care less about headlines or political campaigns. Their one and only focus is on measuring candidates against the very specific criteria that Alfred Nobel laid out in his will. That's it. And what was that original vision? Well, it really boils down to three core ideas: promoting peace, reducing conflict, and fostering cooperation between nations. This simple but really powerful checklist is what every single nominee gets judged against. So when you look at Trump's 2025 bid through that specific lens, the weaknesses become pretty obvious. The peace initiatives were viewed as very recent, key nominations missed the deadline, and a major one was publicly withdrawn. It was this mix of timing issues and questions about the nature of the achievements themselves. But look, the 2025 decision is not the end of this story. Not at all. The whole process just resets and starts over for 2026. So what happens now?
Hey, remember that nomination from Pakistan we talked about earlier? That one was specifically submitted for the 2026 prize. That means, technically, Trump is already in the running for the next cycle. So yeah, this story isn't over, it's just moving on to the next chapter. And all of this brings us back to the fundamental question at the absolute core of the Nobel Peace Prize itself. For any nominee, what really matters more? Making quick, high-profile deals or doing the long, slow, difficult work of building a peace that actually lasts? That is the question the committee will have to answer again in 2026. And honestly, it's a question worth thinking about for all of us.